Thank you for turning to 10, your news leader. 10 News Conference with Gene Valicenti continues right now.
Anybody who's committed a violent crime, an assault, a robbery, whatever it is, that is their target. I cannot think of one person who would say, yes, we should allow violent criminals to remain in this country.
We'll be talking about immigration and other things. Joining me in studio is Republican leadership in the House and the Senate. General Assembly, Senate Minority Leader Jessica Dela Cruz is with us, also House Minority Leader Mike Chippendale. Welcome in.
Thanks for having us.
You know, just a couple of housekeeping before we begin. Boston Globe said you might be looking to leave the legislature and go work for the Trump administration. True or false?
Oh, well, Gene, it would be very difficult to say no, to the president should he ask me to serve in an administration. But it would be very hard to leave the Senate. I love what I do. And, when I was thinking about running for Congress at one point, my constituents were like, please don't leave, you got to stay, you're doing a great job. So but it would be hard to say no to the president.
Where? There's an opening at Small Business Administration. I don't know if you heard about that.
People have asked me about that.
Maybe a deputy ambassador to some. What are you looking for? Tell me.
People have asked me, and I've said, yeah, I'd love to be ambassador to Portugal.
Okay.
Unfortunately, the job has been taken. So if I could get that individual fired, that would be awesome. But no, in all seriousness, I don't want a small business administration position.
Okay.
People have asked me if I was going to take Sandra Cano's position. I don't want it. I love what I do at the Senate. If for me to leave Rhode Island, to leave the Senate, it would have to be a substantial role.
Okay, but if the phone call comes, if the knock on the door comes, you'd be open to hearing it.
How could I not?
Okay. All right, fair enough. How about you, Rep. Chippendale? You going to stay the ambassador from Foster, or you're looking for bigger things?
I am enjoying my time as the minority leader in the House.
Yep.
I have a great group of reps in there with me now, including our new members from this last election. And we've single-handedly increased the horsepower and IQ of the House of Representatives, and I look forward to good things coming out of my group.
Right. You're the senior man now for your party and leadership, I believe.
Yeah.
Right. So are you going to be the emissary from blue Rhode Island to the red White House? He loves personal relationships.
Sure.
Are you going to be getting his ear and say, gotta help us with this, gotta help us with that?
Look, I gap bridges in the House all the time between the progressive Democrats, the institutional Democrats, the Republicans. I'm a bridge builder. My style stands on its own 2 feet, and the past 2 years of my leadership demonstrated that. If an emissary or what have you is needed, and I found myself in a position to help, I'm always going to do something to help my state.
Yeah. Do you think we're in peril? Do you think Donald Trump, once we're on his radar, is he going to go after us and hold up the bridge funding and make our lives miserable because we're so deeply blue here? What do you think, Senator?
Well, I'm not making any announcements, but I think that Rhode Islanders should look at electing a Republican to our congressional delegation.
Okay.
When you have, I get that Rhode Island is navy blue. It's a deep blue state. It's hard to get Republicans elected, but pragmatically speaking, would it be good for Rhode Island to have at least one Republican at the Capitol to advocate for Rhode Island? I think we need to start thinking about that, and we need some good candidates, especially for CD2.
Yeah. Have you got a candidate for governor? You hearing anything? Because I've got at least 3 Democrats, Helena Foulkes, maybe Joe Shekarchi, maybe Governor McKee. He hasn't made the announcement yet, but that's at least 3. I count. Anybody on your side?
Sincerely, I'm focused on the legislative session. That's party politics, and right now, at this time of the year, we don't really stick our noses in party politics because we're legislating. I don't know of anyone.
Have you heard any names out there? I haven't heard any.
I haven't heard anyone seriously.
Maybe Ashley Kalis is going to come back, take another bite at the apple.
Yeah, I don't know who.
You don't know?
No.
All right. Well, listen, let's talk about practical things. The budget that you do know about,
Sure.
and that's on your plate. We have a $250 million hole to plug. The governor says, let's go after Airbnb, cigarettes, and owners of electric cars. Make them pay a $150 fee. I own electric cars.
Yeah.
I've been talking about that on the radio. What do you think? Can you go along with any of that?
Well, I'm never a fan of tax increases. And, RIPEC, in their report, essentially stated that we don't have a revenue problem, we have a spending problem. Republicans have been saying that for years. So I think we need to look at every department where they can make cuts. And I'm not saying that every department needs to cut or should cut, because not every department is created equal. And so we need to focus on that, but then also, I think, Inspector General, root out waste, fraud, and abuse. I think there are things that we can do. As far as electric vehicles, I think they're great, but...
Do you have one?
No, I don't. Okay. Maybe in the future, but electric vehicles aren't gassing up, so they're not paying gas tax, but yet they're heavier than a gas-powered vehicle and cause more damage to our roads. So is it equitable to have, certain people paying for a gas tax, who are using the roads, and then we have electric car drivers who don't pay a tax to use the roads? I think that's where the, that tax might be coming from. I'm not necessarily saying I'm for it, but I get the intent behind it.
I don't speak for electric car owners. I happen to have one. I also have several other gasoline-powered cars, so I think I'm paying my fair share of the gas tax. But if you look at your electric bill, there's all kinds of fees. Why don't you just tell Rhode Island Energy, hey, give me a nickel, because I need it for the roads? Is that a way to look at this? Because the electric car owner said, you're hammering me enough, and you begged me to go buy one. Well, and now you want another $1.50 out of me.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to put that on the ratepayers who use electricity, who are already paying some of the highest electricity rates in the state. I think EV owners having cars that are generally 30% heavier and do more damage to roads, but don't buy gasoline to pay into gas taxes, which pay for our roads, the repair and the maintenance of our roads, they need to pay an impact fee. They're doing more damage. The entire premise of roadworks, the toll program, was that trucks do more damage because they're heavier. Well, the same thing applies to electric vehicles. If you're forcing us to do it, then you're going to have to come up with a scheme. And I think that should be borne by those in the electric vehicles. No offense to you, Gene.
Yeah. No, listen, I have several cars. Some of them are gas, some of them are electric. I happen to like the electric. I think it's fun. I think it's smooth. By the way, since you opened this idea of heavy versus lighter, what about the SUVs? What about the Suburbans? What about the Yukons? They're much heavier.
They pay gas tax. They're
so
paying for the repair of the roads.
It's a consumption tax.
It is. And right now, EVs are consuming our roads at a higher rate of damage, but not paying into the fund that repairs them. So, yeah, there needs to be equity there.
Okay. What about the tolls that all the cars go under? It's going to happen. They're going to turn on those gantries again. That's pretty much certain now. Governor, Senate leadership, House leadership, we're turning them on. We just have to figure out how to do it without hurting local truckers. Do you have a plan?
I've had a lot of conversations with the Rhode Island Trucking Association. They're working on a lot of different fee structures and things that they already pay in the course of doing business, maybe rearranging things there in a way that will help them to fund and pay for the roads and make it a little bit more equitable for Rhode Island businesses. But I think it's important that we remember the decision from the federal court was that we cannot treat Rhode Island trucks different than out-of-state trucks. Yeah. So we have to be very measured in how we compensate the Rhode Island companies so that we don't run afoul of that ruling. I think it's clear they will turn the tolls back on. We already got the $300 million in Garvey bonds that we no longer have revenue to pay for them. We need that revenue.
Right. That's we can borrow against any future revenue coming in if we don't get the funding. It's a complicated issue, but I follow you. It's easy to understand the tolls. They're going to be turned back on. We can't treat Rhode Island truckers more favorably than an out-of-state trucker. Do you have an idea how to do it, how to come up with this formula, how they should do it?
Oh gosh, I would have to look at the formula, but what it really comes down to is that cost is going to be passed on to the consumer. Right. It's just going to make things more expensive for Rhode Islanders because we know that they're not going to absorb that. They're going to pass it on to the consumer. And it's another tax. A toll is a tax, a fee is a tax. Call it what you want, but it's just another tax.
Okay. I take it you don't have an electric car. I meant to ask you that.
Oh, no. Okay. You can have my internal combustion engine when you pry it from my cold dead hands.
All right. Oh, Charlton Heston here. Okay, very good. All right, coming up next on 10 News Conference, we'll continue our conversation. We'll get to the bridge and the bridges. That's the data hike and a whole host of other issues of importance to you. We're back with the Republican leadership in the House and Senate, Representative Chippendale, Senator Dela Cruz. All right, let's do a kind of a lightning round. There's so much to cover. We've talked about the budget. Now let's talk about the bridge. Peter Alviti says the funding is not in jeopardy because Donald Trump just pulled the plug on Green New Deal initiatives. We're safe. Do you believe that, Rep?
Yeah, I mean, there is no Green New Deal element to fixing our bridge, so I don't see why there would be a problem there.
All right, but you have other problems, certainly, from the inception of the problem to the way it's going. So go ahead.
On the bridge.
What's your concern? Yeah, about the bridge.
Well, yeah, I mean, we've had this discussion time and time again. We need them to work quickly, safely, and affordably. Mm-hmm. This is a self-inflicted problem. We did not maintain our own infrastructure. This isn't the Fed's problem. This isn't the Green New Deal's problem. This isn't Donald Trump's problem. This is a Rhode Island failure of leadership problem that has existed for decades. And they have to swallow that pill. It's a tough pill to swallow. But get on it, get it fixed, and get our state back working.
Many viewers will agree with you and say you're absolutely right. Now, just let me inject that we don't know what went wrong with the bridge. I haven't got access to the court documents that say what we're alleging. Do you know anything that I don't know? We don't know what happened.
We may not know what happened, but we know that it was an unusual design for a bridge. And we also know that the bridge wasn't properly inspected. We had an inspector who was inspecting a different bridge who happened to look over and see something that was off. And that's how we found out about the problem.
Let's go to Bridges, which is ironically the name for the social services computer system, which was hacked. Bad guys got in. I would like to know how they got in. Do you know anything I don't know? Has anybody briefed your side? Are you brought into any of this?
We haven't been briefed. I don't know the technical means that the person accessed the data from, but I think it's just a demonstration of how poorly constructed that entire system was, that a hacker was able to take 65% of Rhode Islanders' personally private protected information and their medical information, and now people are I have more constituents calling me about identity fraud issues that they're dealing with. All sorts of things are happening now because we hired an incompetent company to build a product that they were never suited to build, and we still, as Stockholm Syndrome, we are holding on to that Deloitte contract and those contractors and handing millions and hundreds of millions of dollars over to those people who have done nothing but hurt Rhode Islanders.
Well, you're shaking your head in agreement.
Yeah.
You want to swap out Deloitte?
I mean, we have 700,000 Rhode Islanders whose information has been exposed. And I was just at a meeting, a long-term care coordinating meeting, council meeting with Lieutenant Governor leads that. And it's not just the individuals who have applied for services, it's individuals who have looked for health insurance, it's individuals who are associated, so like say you have a family member who applies for SNAP benefits and they list you as maybe somebody that they live with.
Right.
Well, now your information is out there too, even though you've never applied for SNAP benefits.
No.
It's serious.
You have college kids in between jobs. They weren't covered by their parents' insurance, and they applied for Obamacare, now they're getting a letter.
Yes.
All these years later, their stuff is out there too. I know of a couple of particular cases, but the governor has argued that swapping out Deloitte could be more expensive and more aggravating than keeping them and letting them fix the problem.
He's wrong.
Yeah.
He's wrong. The industry itself, the experts who do this work in states across our country have specifically called out Rhode Island and Deloitte as the case study of failure on how to do one of these projects. I can provide you documents from a national conference I attended where they called out Rhode Island, Deloitte, and UHIP as what not to do. And it may be cheaper in his eyes now. In the long term, over the life of the use of this program, it will not be cheaper. The human suffering alone, and let's not forget when it was first unrolled, the millions of dollars of fines from the feds because we were so far out of compliance. The people we were just giving the benefits to because we couldn't qualify them, their eligibility. This has been a catastrophe from the moment they flipped it on in 2016.
I think if I fact check you, I think you'll be right, because I remember UHIP under Gina Raimondo and the line. But the argument is that we're stuck with them. The bad decisions were made. You said no, we're not.
Yeah.
So what would you go with, IBM or something like that?
I would go with whoever the industry expert is. I'm not the expert to say that, but we know that the industry has declared Deloitte as incompetent. Let's find someone who's not. Okay. There are other states doing this. We can do it too.
Let's talk about the homeless. It's been weeks and weeks they're in the news. They dominate the headlines, and that pallet shelter thing is not open yet. You really called the governor out on that in your response. I mean, you basically called him a failure with regard to that and everything else.
Well, I was just in committee and I said, it's like you're on a boat, you see people drowning, you have room on that boat, and you say, I wish somebody could help. Like, we have empty pallet shelters for individuals to occupy, and yet we're unable to get them in there. It is a failure of epic proportions. We had an oversight hearing recently, and some of the sentiments that were shared were like, well, that happened in the past. We don't know what happened to lead us to this point. Well, we need to know what happened in the past so that we don't make the same mistake. And then, Gene, I would point out that these pallet shelters cost Rhode Islanders upwards of $80,000. Take 2 sheets of plywood, put them together, that's about the size of this shelter. I was talking to one business owner who said he built cottages on his property, just about $50,000 each. They have a bathroom, they have a kitchen, it's a 1-bedroom apartment. So we have the state building these little pallet shelters that can't even be occupied, that cost more than having a little cottage where you could have your own kitchen, your own bathroom, and your own bedroom.
There's plenty of blame to go around.
Plenty of blame.
On the governor's watch, the legislature gave House of Hope the money because they asked for it. House of Hope didn't think it through either.
Clearly.
Okay? And now we're stuck with them. I mean, they're going to open up in a month. We'll see. Do you want to just take the last word on this? We've got about a minute and a half, and I want to ask you your top priorities going back. Go ahead, take the pallet shelter.
On the pallet shelters, look, we saw in western North Carolina after the hurricane, a group of Amish folks went down there and in 2 days constructed a number of livable houses for people to go in. Because why? They didn't have the regulatory BS that we have to deal with in Rhode Island. When our own state cannot build things because our regulations are too prohibitive, that's a huge problem. Let's look at that. That's where our housing issue come from. That's where our homelessness issues are coming from.
Would you demand an audit of all the agencies that help the homeless?
Absolutely.
Hundreds of millions of dollars
Absolutely.
over time. Would you jointly demand an audit of that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, we've been calling for an inspector general for years, and this is why. These are the things that will be addressed by an independent office of inspector general. They don't care what party you're from. They don't care if you're in the majority or the minority. They're going to look at things. They're going to audit, and they're going to do the right thing when it comes down to it.
How does government spend so much money on this little shed with no kitchen, no bathroom, and then you have a private business owner who can build a one-bedroom cottage? I'd like to know, where is the waste happening in government? If the private sector can do it better, maybe we should be looking at the private sector to do it.
All right, I've got to hold it there, but thanks both of you for coming on. I'll have you on the radio. We'll continue the conversation. We're just getting started over here. Rep. Chippendale, Minority Leader in the House, and Senator Jessica Dela Cruz, Minority Leader in the Senate. Thanks for coming on 10 News
Thanks,
Conference.
Gene.